Right, hi Year 8. So I'm videoing this lesson about DNA so that we can find out a little bit more about who discovered the structure of DNA and also a little bit more about why it forms that double helix. Okay, so just to start us off, your little retrieval task is, what does DNA stand for? Now, hopefully some of you wrote that down on Monday and hopefully you can remember it and spell it correctly. So pause the video and see if you can write out what DNA stands for. Okay, so it stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, you're very unlikely to ever really have to spell it or write it out in full, but we use DNA more frequently. Okay, so what we're going to go through is we're going to look at the scientists that are credited with discovering DNA and how it kind of forms that double helix shape. But first of all, what I want to go through is this task that you did for me on Monday. Okay, so we started to think about some genetics terminology, some genetics words, and trying to make sure that we're not using them incorrectly, because some of them you might have come across before, but we don't necessarily use them in the right context. So what I asked you to do was compare that animal cell with a wallet. Okay, now some of you got yourself in a bit of a knot with it, but I just want to go through just a suggestion of how you could compare them. Okay, so you could say the wallet is like a cell because it contains all the different parts with your money, and I think there's a stamp in there, and your credit cards and everything. Okay, it might have some family pictures, and it contains all those different parts. The wallet itself is like a cell. Now, somebody suggested that the material that the wallet is made from could be the cell membrane. Okay, so that's another thing. So if it's a leather wallet, the leather part would be the cell membrane because it's holding everything together. Okay, so that's an idea that we could compare. Now, you could say the pocket inside where the bank card is kept, where that credit card is the nucleus. Now, some of you just went straight on and said, right, well, the credit card is the nucleus. That's absolutely fine because that's a pretty important part, isn't it? So especially now, we don't really use cash so much. It's all cards. Okay, so the card could be the nucleus, or you could say it's the pocket. Okay, so the credit card really has got lots and lots of information stored on it. So you could say the credit card is like a chromosome, okay, because it's got all the different parts to it. If you've said that the credit card is like the nucleus, that's absolutely fine. But within that credit card, you've got the chip, okay, that allows you to do sort of contactless payments. And then you've got all those numbers on there as well. You've got a big long number across the length of it. Now, they're unique, okay, and it's a code for your bank account or your credit card account. Okay, so that number is sort of like the genetic material, isn't it, or the genetic information, because that, if you go and spend £20 on your credit card, it doesn't charge someone else. It would be nice, but it doesn't charge someone else. It charges you the £20. Okay, so that number is like the genetic information. It's a code that gets you through to the right place. Okay, now another thing that a couple of people pointed out is that you could also say that all those numbers and the chip on the credit card is unique to each person. Okay, so everybody's credit card is different, even if you all have the same bank or you have the same type of credit card, whatever. Each number and each information is unique to each account, just like your genetic information is unique to you. Okay, so hopefully that's kind of given you a bit more of an idea of the task that we did. As I say, hopefully it hasn't confused you too much, because we were trying to do it to be helpful more than anything. Right, okie doke. So in terms of the parts or the words that we talked about, okay, I want you to pause the video and see if you can fit the words that we used on Monday into these 4 sentences. Okay, so give yourself a couple of minutes, see if you can figure out what those 4 words are. Okie doke. So inside our cells, we said that we've got this central part, which is the most important part. That's our nucleus. Okay, so cells in our bodies have got a nucleus, and that contains all this genetic information. And the genetic information is on these strands. Okay, so it's on these strands, and those strands are called chromosomes. So a chromosome is a strand of genetic material. And the chromosomes are split up into sections that code for particular characteristics. And those sections are called genes. Okay, so a gene is a part of a chromosome that codes for a particular characteristic. And then the chromosomes are made of this double helix, this sort of twisted ladder shape, and that is the chemical called DNA. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Okay, so let's first have a look at how it was discovered. So the scientists credited with discovering the structure of DNA is James Watson and Francis Crick. And they sort of came up with a model that looked like this. It's called the ball and stick model. Okay, they came up with this model in 1953. Okay, now the discovery of DNA is quite often sort of quite controversial because before they came up with that, there was a lot of work done by another scientist called Rosalind Franklin. Okay, now she'd done X-ray studies. And they'd suggested that the DNA was a double helix. So her and another scientist, Maurice Wilkins, they'd done a lot of work on this, and she suggested that DNA was this double helix. But it was Watson and Crick that came up with the actual model of how it was formed. Okay, so although it worked on a lot of the ideas of Rosalind Franklin and Maurice Wilkins, she didn't get she didn't get very much credit at all. The other scientists were actually awarded the Nobel Prize in 1962. So in those days, quite often, the female scientists were sort of, pushed to one side a little bit, and the men got a lot of the credit. Okay, so Watson, Crick and Wilkins got the Nobel Prize for coming up with this model, whereas really Rosalind Franklin was another scientist that had actually suggested it first. Now, there's another scientist called Erwin Chargaff, who also talked about these bases, and that's what we're going to think about today. Okay, so all of these scientists kind of built on each other's work to help us understand DNA like we do today. Okay, now a lot of people, because you couldn't see it, because it's so small, even with a microscope you can't see that coil, that helix of DNA. A lot of other scientists didn't really believe them. They'd come up with this theory, but until it was sort of practiced and investigated and done other tests and other experiments, a lot of the other scientists didn't believe them. Okay, and that's quite often what happens in science. When someone comes up with something new, it has to be sort of proven and worked on by other people before everyone accepts it. Okay, so in terms of DNA, we've got, like I said, this twisted ladder, this double helix, and the rungs of the ladder are made up of these what we call base pairs. So we know that our DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid, and we know that one chromosome is a long strand of this DNA molecule. Okay, and basically what DNA does is it carries like a code that controls what your body builds in terms of your characteristics. So is it going to build the pigments that give you brown eyes, or is it going to build the pigments that give you blue eyes, or is it going to build the pigments that give you freckles? Okay, so it's a code that is the instructions for you as a human, for a banana as a banana, for a giraffe as a giraffe. Okay, so every living thing has got this code that makes them all unique. Okay, now what we have we've got this ladder and we have 4 types of bases. Okay, they're called base pairs. Now we use their initials. They do have names, but I'd rather we just stick to what their initials are. So we have A and C and G and T. Okay, now these will always go in pairs. Now if you look at the shape of these, they've been drawn in quite a particular way that hopefully you might figure out which ones match up. Okay, so just have a look at the shape of them on the right hand side and see if you can think which letters might pair up. Okay, so they always join in a pair in exactly the same way, and I hope you've noticed which shapes fit together. Okay, so A will always pair with T. Okay, so anywhere on the DNA strand where there's an A, it will be paired with a T. Okay, and C always pairs with G. Right, so you always have these pairs, okay, A with T and C with G, and it makes up the rungs of the ladder, okay, and that's what is the genetic code. It's quite simple, really, when you think about it like that. I mean, it's very, very complicated in terms of making you into a human, but it always follows this pattern, okay, and one way to remember it, I'll just go on to this first, is apples grow on trees. Okay, so you remember A and T go together, and cars go in the garage. So that's how C and G go together. Okay, so they always have A and T and C with G. Okay, so I'll go back onto here. So if I put an A in my first rung, okay, it won't fit with a C base because it's the wrong shape. It just won't work. So I have to put a T, okay, to go with it. Now I might have, let's have a thought. I might have a T down here on this side. Again, I can't match that up with a G or a C, okay. That will match up on the other side with an A. Okay, so the A and T, doesn't matter which way around they go, they are always paired with each other. Okay, now I could build any code. So let's just make a bit of code, and then I'll change it and I'll explain to you why I've changed it. So let's have a C there and a G, and then no, we won't have that one. I want another A. Let's go AT. Okay, so it might be that is the genetic code for blue eyes. Okay, so that stretch there, that unique pattern, that unique code that I've made could be the code for, I've forgotten what I said now. Did I say brown or blue eyes? I can't remember. So it could be for your eye colour. So let's say it's blue eyes. Okay, now if I do a different one, I'm just going to make a different code this time, and you can have two next to each other, it doesn't matter. Okay, but I have to match it up with its right pair. This could be the code for, I don't know, being able to roll your tongue, for example. Okay, so it's a different code. So you're still using those same four pairs, but the code relates to something else. And that's exactly how the DNA code works. Okay, now what I want you to do is you are going to match up this code here. So what I want you to do is draw out the top strand, okay, pause the video, and then match up the right letters underneath, and then you can check it. Okay, so hopefully you have come up with this. So my G always match with C, C always matches with G, and then A and T always match together. So wherever you've got one strand, you've got the correct pair on the other side. Okay, so that's how it works. Now, your little task is related to this bit. Now, the DNA code, each 3 letters makes one particular amino acid, and amino acids join together to make proteins, and that could be a protein for blue eyes, proteins for brown eyes, a protein for freckles, a protein to make insulin, a protein to make an enzyme in your body. Okay, so the 3 letters make up one amino acid. Okay, so GGC makes the amino acid called glycine. Okay, TAT makes the amino acid tyrosine. Okay, so this is how you sort of decipher the code. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to try and write the code of your name. Okay, so I'll come back to that in a minute. So I'll go on to the sheet now, and you are going to try and make the code, the DNA code for your name. Okay. Right, so this is the task that you are going to complete. Okay, now this sheet is on class charts. Okay, now it's going to keep dipping in and out in a really annoying way. So just bear with me a minute. I'll have to probably keep focusing it a little bit. So the first thing we need to do is I'm going to write the letters of my name onto here so that I can keep track of it. Okay, so K-A-R-E-N. Okay, so that's my name. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to try and make the code that would produce the name Karen, okay, using this coded sequence here. Now remember that each amino acid is made from 3 letters. Okay, so what we'll say is that each letter in your name has a 3-letter code, and you're going to use this on the side to get those codes. Okay, so every amino acid has to have 3 base pairs. Okay, and just in the same way, every letter in my name is going to have 3 base pairs. Okay, so I'm going to look each letter up and write them in here. Okay, so I'm going to find the letter K. Okay, so I'm going to go over to here. I'm going to find the letter K. That's represented by the amino acid lysine, and it's AAG. Okay, so that represents the letter K. Then I'm going to look up A, okay, which is up here, which is alanine, and that has got the code GCT. Okay, then my letter R is arginine, which is CGT. Then I've got an E, which is glutamic acid, so that's GAG. And then my last letter, which is an N, is, I can't find N in the alphabet, is this one here, so that is GAC. Okay, so that's one strand of my DNA that would make up the code for my name. Okay, now I want you to get as far as that, because then on Friday I'm going to show you how to make a model that we can actually build our name, and then we can eat it. Okay, so that's what we're going to do on Friday. So just to bring everything together, now that you've done your DNA code for your name, okay, just we'll go through in terms of all the words that we've used. So, let me start with chromosome actually, because the chromosome is the longest part, isn't it? So the chromosome is a single strand, okay, of DNA. So we've got 46 chromosomes in the human body, okay? The chromosomes contain genes, and each gene codes for one characteristic, okay, so freckles, eye colour, hair colour, straight hair, curly hair, that kind of stuff. Okay, you've got your DNA helix. It's called a double helix, so it's our twisted ladder. Okay, the sides of the ladder is called the backbone. Okay, so that kind of holds it together, but it doesn't actually carry any genetic information. So it's just the bit that holds the rungs together. And then the rungs are our bases. So remember, there are 4 bases that always match up in the right order. Okay, and these bases are what form the code. Okay, so our base pairs, you've always got A and T, and you've always got C and G that will form the base pairs. Okay, so hopefully now you're a little bit more happy with those words.